And it does seem like consumers too have some reasons to smile when it comes to petrol. We've been seeing what has been happening there. Some people have tagged it the petrol price war. I wonder if that captures it. The managing director of ASCOM, Mr. Adio Ayodele, is here in the studio. Mr. Ayodele, good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Are you one of those joined this tag of petrol price war?
I mean, we're all excited that the prices are falling. It leaves us with more discretionary income, and I mean, it's a good thing to see. That's what obviously deregulation promises, that prices, would fall at some point, and it looks like it's beginning to happen, and it's a welcome development, especially because, last year there was so much inflationary pressure, especially on households across the country, and to see that, prices of energy, which forms a major component of our expenditure, is going down. I think it breeds a bit of relief, for us. So it's a good thing.
Yeah, but I mean, I think some economists will be quick to say it's not just about price falling. When you talk about deregulation, the price could also increase. so let's not just lose sight of the other side of the coin.
You're pretty spot on that the price could also go up, really and truly. But that's why you need, a deliberate policy environment that targets lower pricing, especially for the consumer, especially with the products that, like petrol, that is a major driver of the economy. You need that pragmatic policy environment that ensures that, we keep prices or we drive prices down, especially creating environments where businesses who are invested in that sector can lower costs, especially with overheads, and then collectively we can see prices, go down, and not a situation where, like you rightfully said, businesses are exposed to such volatility that makes prices go up unpredictably. That's not the kind of business environment we want, because especially petrol is very important. It's a mainstay in the economy, and it's a major trigger of inflation in the country. So if you are able to bring it down, obviously you're going to take away the sting of inflation, and hopefully after 2 quarters you're likely to begin to see significant decrease in prices of goods and services.
So I wanted to ask what government policies, but I remember we're just trying to win ourselves off subsidy, which has done us a whole lot of bad over the decades. But I do remember that Dangote applauded the crude for Naira and attributed the drop in the price from there. Others have said, Petran still fighting the issue of exporting crude that's supposed to be for local refiners. I guess these are the policies you refer to when you talk about policies to help moderate the price of petrol in this case.
Yes, you've touched on a very important point, and I think we spoke a bit of this sometime early December, and I talked about the fact that it was important for us to have policy consistency. And it's only policy consistency that will lead to the kinds of outcomes that we want for our economy. And in this instance, lower pricing of petrol, as it were. Unfortunately, what we have seen was that over the December period, you saw the results of the crude for Naira deal that was signed between Dangote and the federal government. But as we speak today, there seems to be some sort of a lackadaisical attitude on the side of the NNPCL. Because if you looked at the report from the NUPRC, it appears that the amount of crude that has been allocated to the Dangote refinery for March is just short of 62,000 barrels of oil per day. Now, if you're allocating 62,000 barrels out of what should be 385,000, which was the deal that was agreed, you begin to wonder, because you now expect Dangote to now import the shortfall, perhaps from the United States, which could also now impact on the pricing of the product. Because I can't understand why, at a time where we have ramped up production from 1.3 million barrels of oil per day to about 1.7, 1.8, rather than increasing the supply to our domestic refiner, what we have seen is a significant drop from what should be 385,000 to barely 62,000 barrels of oil per day. And that is not the kind of consistency that we need to see. It also explains why The NMDPRA is being challenged in court as we speak today to stop the issuance of petrol licenses, to marketers, given the fact that there is also a local refiner that is able to meet local demand.
We have local refiners, not just Dangote.
Exactly. So again, you ask yourself, why in the world are we giving out import licensing? I mean, between October and today, the NNPCL has imported close to 4 billion liters of petrol as we speak. In January alone, they've done over 200 million liters of petrol. And you wonder, if we do a simple math, a simple arithmetic here, if the Dangote refinery does an average of 40 million liters per day, and you add the capacity of LMA refinery in Port Harcourt and you add the Warri refinery, it suggests to me that we'll be doing an average of 45 million liters, of oil per day. Of course, the NMDPRA have come out to say that the daily average consumption of petrol in Nigeria is 44 million liters of oil per day. So explain to me why there is a need to consistently and continuously import, these huge amounts of petrol into this country, which I believe is sabotaging our economy. And these are not just my words. These are the words of the CBN governor, who has come out severally to say that 40% of our foreign exchange pressures come from the importation of petrol. So why do we continue to expend scarce forex resources on the importation of petrol when there is clear evidence that we can meet local demand? And of course, the PIA 3178 and 9 of the PIA clearly stipulates or restrains the regulator from issuing petrol import licenses, except there is clear evidence that there is, inability to meet demand locally. But there is no evidence as we speak today. In fact, the reason why refineries like Dangote is not even able to do 600,000 barrels of oil per day is because there's no guarantee of crude supply, from the NNPCL. So these are the issues. And except we follow a consistent policy environment, we are continue to follow this topsy-turvy, turbulent kind of policy formulation where today, you're supporting the private sector, tomorrow, it's just a bit funny to me.
As the consideration of perhaps it is obligations that have been agreed even before now, could that be a factor?
Now, you see, when you even talk about obligations,
especially when it comes to crude.
Exactly, and I know that you're talking about, some of the swap deals that, the NNPC typically makes. And I know for a fact, that I think even the National Assembly passed a resolution to that effect. And, even the federal government, has also argued that we have to even stop, these swap deals where we're taking loans and guaranteeing them, with crude oil. But be that as it may, imagine that those deals were already done when you were producing 1.3 million barrels of oil per day, isn't it? I'm saying now that we have also ramped up production by close to 600,000 barrels of oil per day. So we're doing now, by their own numbers, about 1.6 to 1.8 million barrels of oil per day. So the extra 500,000 barrels on average that we're producing, where is it going to? Why isn't that being allocated to local refiners? And, and when we talk about this thing, it presumes that you're doing the local refiner a favor. But in real sense, first of all, you're bound by law to supply the local refiners first. And secondly, it is just economic, it makes basic economic sense to support local, refining capacity so that you can have energy security and so that you can shore up your foreign reserves. And by extension, you can also get to a point where prices can also begin to come down significantly. Let's not even talk about, the job creation and the backward integration and the value chain, that it also creates. So, I mean, on all fronts, it's why I make the argument that this belligerent and this constant, will to continuously import petrol against the PIA, I think it's pure economic sabotage and it has to stop.
What do you think are the benefits of the continuous import, as you say?
I think it benefits only one class of Nigerians. And obviously, there has to be some sort of an oil, what call them a cartel or call them, fat cows in the oil industry. But those are the only people that it benefits. Because if you followed newspaper headlines in the last 1 week, bold headlines on major newspapers saying marketers are jettisoning, petrol that has been imported, and they are trying to go to Dangote to get petrol. In fact, some of the reports say that some of them are even changing the paints on their tankers to go get petrol and leave petrol from Dangote because it's clearly cheaper. So the petrol that you're even importing is not even as cheap as what is produced here locally. And might I add that, the Dangote refinery has also done something very interesting. They've implemented some sort of an equalization fund wherein you can sell the petrol at some sort of uniform price across the country. And that, is music to the ears of marketers because it's also value for the end users who come to buy. They've also reduced the cost of loading the products for them. So, if you look at cost for most marketers, it makes more sense for them to lift from the local refiner here
So do you think the consumers, the demand, can balance things out? Because if, as you noted, and I know I heard that story, how some, marketers are changing the color. Exactly. I haven't seen it, but I've heard those stories. If you now have a fact where, or a situation where consumers only head to, where the price is friendly, do you think that could balance things out in that landscape?
Well, if you looked at the kind of deal arrangement that the Dangote refinery made with a few petrol stations, and what seemed to have happened was that people went to, because it offered cheaper prices, obviously, and you had a situation where a lot more people were queuing in those filling stations that they had that arrangement. So, basic economic behavior, people are going to queue up to where they are going to get cheaper prices and better quality at the end of the day. And so that makes sense for the consumer. And so that's why I said, if you look at the entire gamut, whether it's in terms of pricing for the end user, which is the consumer, whether it's in terms of, our macroeconomic fundamentals, and I'm talking about reducing the pressure on our forex, building our reserves, and stimulating the economy, all of these things tick in favor in supporting the success of the local players in the sector, one of which is the Dangote refinery, especially when, and I have to go back to this, it is the NNPC that has said that the Warri refinery is working, isn't it? They are the ones who have gone to town to say that the Port Harcourt refinery is working. They've said marketers have also been lifting products from there. Why? And that question needs to be asked. They need to show us a basic arithmetic to show why, if these your refineries are working, why you've been unable to bring prices down, and secondly, why there is this, constant need to import billions of liters of petrol, into this economy, which, like I repeat, goes on to sabotage our economy.
Well, I guess the NNPC does have some questions to answer.
A lot of questions
because,
to answer.
You're not the only one who has alleged that there's importation of petrol. At this time, we've had numbers and all of that. So, we do hope we will hear their own side of the story. There must be a reason.
I hope they explain.
There must be a reason. And I know it can't be sabotaged because we're all in Nigeria. And if Nigeria thrives, we thrive, we do our business, we make profits and we succeed. But thank you so much for sharing your perspective with us this afternoon, the Managing Director of Economist, Mr. Adio Ayodele.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.